If you clicked on this video, chances are you're around 25. You are either still living with your parents or renting an apartment or a house. You've got a normal job, you make what's probably an average salary for your city, and at the same point you are definitely wondering about owning your place of your own. You are probably opened Zillow or Realtor to check housing prices and thought, what the hell is going on here? Why does a house with bed bugs and dog piece carpet in some suburb of San Antonio cost 8 years of my salary? Can I ever afford a place of my own? As a middle class person without some insane income, will this bubble ever pop? I mean, nothing can keep going up forever, right? Unfortunately, the answer to all those questions is no. So today we are going to break down why real estate will keep getting more expensive. And at the end of this video, I'll give you a couple of personal pieces of advice for the younger generation. Let's start with the stats. About 60% of owner-occupied homes in America belong to people over 55. So what? Did boomers just get lucky? Was it actually way easier for them to buy a house? Yes, boomers absolutely had it easier. So let's go back in time. It all started in 1945. Second World War ends, millions of veterans return home, and suddenly they're asking one question. Where are we supposed to live and start families? Housing in major cities was in catastrophic shortage. At the same time, land around those cities was basically empty wasteland with no infrastructure, which meant it was dirt cheap. A brilliant solution for that problem came from a developer named William Levitt. He introduced the concept of mass-producing suburban houses like an assembly line. He bought up huge amounts of cheap land and started building entire neighborhoods at scale. This idea perfectly aligned with the interest of rapidly growing auto lobby, companies like Ford, General Motors and Chrysler. Because, let's be honest, without a car, living in those neighborhoods makes no sense. And that model also pushed the massive expansion of the federal highway system. Since land was cheap and permits back then were issued almost instantly with very little bureaucracy, building a house could take as little as 2 days. Add to that subsidized mortgages and benefits for veterans. By today's standards, those homes were unbelievably cheap, roughly 2 to 3 annual incomes for a single working man in the family. And that's how the American suburb and the American dream was born. Your own house, your own car, your own backyard with a barbecue grill. This led to the white middle class living cities en masse, a phenomenon known as white flight. Cities were seen as crime-ridden, overcrowded, constantly congested places. Meanwhile, suburbia looked like paradise for a young family. Your own home, your own yard, open space, quiet streets, safe neighborhoods for kids, a cup of coffee on the porch in the morning, a friendly smiling neighbor John next door. From the early 50s to the early 70s was truly a golden age for the middle class, a time of economic growth, a time of cheap land, a time of mass-produced housing. And because of that, home ownership became a basic affordable goal for almost every young family. It looked like this prosperity would last forever, but nothing lasts forever. The first cracks appeared in the 70s. That's when the first generation of cheap home owners started entering the real estate market. And people suddenly realized something. Why should housing stay cheap? As homeowners, we want prices to go up. Our homes is an asset, and we don't want that asset losing value. That's how the "not in my backyard" movement was born. The logic is simple. We bought our house, so don't build new housing near us. That could lower our property value. Homeowners started filing lawsuits, demanding hearings, and blocking dense development. That's when single-family zoning spread across America. Huge areas were zoned so that only one house could be built per lot. In some American cities, 70 to 80% of all land is zoned exclusively for single-family homes. Add to that the National Environmental Policy Act, passed in the early 70s. Now large construction projects had to go through environmental reviews, public hearings and endless legal procedures. Do I even need to explain how all of that made housing construction slower and more expensive? Do I need to explain how much is limited the supply of new housing? Still, this wasn't the worst era yet. Most middle-class boomers could still afford to buy a home with a mortgage, but the trend had already begun. By the 90s, a new generation of homeowners had grown up, the boomers themselves, the largest generation in history. What does that mean? It means another massive group of people became interested in restricting housing supply and pushing prices even higher. And this is when the real turning point happened. Housing stopped being a basic necessity for young families. It became an investment asset for older generations who had bought homes cheaply during the post-war boom. Real estate became a financial asset. That's when the US housing bubble started inflating. Homes prices began rising faster than people's incomes. Banks started handing out cheap mortgages left and right, often to borrowers with low income and terrible credit histories. What pushed them to do that? Simple. The market and rating agencies believed that housing prices never fall nationwide. Banks were happy to hand out mortgages to almost anyone. Sometimes they didn't even check whether the borrower could actually afford the payments. That's when securitization came into play. A bank issues a mortgage, sells it to an investment fund, gets the money back, and immediately issues another mortgage. In an environment where housing supply was already limited, handing out mortgages left and right inevitably caused prices to skyrocket. People started panicking. Their logic was simple. If prices keep rising, we have to buy now. Private investors flooded the market and speculation exploded. People bought homes with cheap mortgages, did a quick cosmetic renovation, and flipped them 6 to 12 months later for profit. Large investors bought entire blocks of houses at the construction stage and resold them a year later for massive profits. Even back then, analysts were shouting, "What the hell are you doing? Why are you artificially pumping the housing market? Housing is already in short supply. Why are you handing out loans to anyone who asks? Don't you realize this bubble could burst?" And it did. In 2008, the global financial crisis hit. Interest rates rose. Risky borrowers stopped paying their mortgages, and a chain reaction began. About 10 million homes were foreclosed by banks. Many investors went bankrupt. In some regions, housing prices dropped 40 to 50% almost overnight. So you'd think housing would become cheap again, but that's not what happened. Instead, large investment funds like BlackRock and Blackstone entered the scene. They bought tens of thousands of foreclosed homes at bargain prices and created the largest rental operator in America, Invitation Homes. At the same time, construction collapsed and banks tightened mortgage requirements. Then around 2010, another huge generation entered the housing market. The millennials, another generation that benefits from rising housing prices. Does that make you think of anything? Exactly. Large investors realized something. Housing will always be needed, so why not to make money of it? Homeowners realized something too. Why not push for more environmental and zoning regulations that slow down construction and create artificial scarcity? Registrations on construction benefit every existing homeowner, and that's how the younger generation ended up trapped. You need somewhere to live away from your parents, but housing prices have gone through the roof. Living in the middle of nowhere isn't attractive. It's far from work, there is no infrastructure, no entertainment, nothing for kids, and the local crowd can be questionable. So the choice becomes simple. If you want to live near civilization, pay rent. You'll never own your home. You'll spend your entire life paying a subscription fee for a place someone else owns. You might ask, can't the government break this system? Why can't we recreate the housing miracle of the 40s? Why not reduce bureaucracy and allow mass housing construction again? No, it can't, and it won't. The housing miracle of the 40s wasn't a feature of the system, it was a bug, a historical accident that happened under extremely rare conditions. Cheap land, minimal bureaucracy, and housing not yet seen as an investment asset. Today, no politician is going to deliberately crush the housing market. Most voters in the USA are boomers and Gen X homeowners who bought houses cheaply decades ago. Do you think they want their property values dropping just so Gen Z can afford homes? Of course not. And honestly, you can understand them. That's just rational self-interest. Crushing the housing market would be political suicide. And let's not forget the low buying power of giant investment firms that definitely won't allow any laws that push housing prices down. As sad as it may sound, home ownership will never again be a universal baseline of middle-class life. Real estate has permanently become a rising investment asset. Governments, older homeowners, and large corporations have long realized that housing demand will never disappear, which means prices will keep rising, and that means money can be made. No one really cares that you, a young working adult, can't afford a home. If you want a place to live, pay rent to a landlord or an investment fund. The average middle-class citizen without serious income will never again be able to afford housing without taking a 30-year mortgage, and your children likely won't be able to afford it at all. Governments and corporations also don't benefit from people owning homes. A homeowner isn't tied to one job for decades and isn't as vulnerable to inflation or economic crisis. So corporations are selling you a new ideology: housing as a subscription. You'll rent your entire life and you'll never own anything. Against that background, it's especially funny to hear boomers lecturing young people. You kids waste money on iPhones, food delivery, coffee shops, and Amazon purchases, when you could be saving for a house. Or wow, thanks grandma. Maybe I should skip buying that $3 Amazon phone case so I can save that money toward a house. Back when your husband bought a house in a New York suburb in the 70s for a free annual salaries, while you could stay home and raise the kids. So what should you actually do? Let me give you one piece of advice. Remember this like a bedtime prayer. Housing prices will keep rising. Real estate almost never gets cheaper in the long run. Regulations will only get stricter. Soon you won't even be able to cut down a small tree without filling out thousands of permits. Your kids probably won't own homes either, unless they inherit one. So the best time to buy something is today. Not tomorrow, not in some mythical better times, because those better times are never coming. I know you want to live in great neighborhoods, close to work, close to cafes, restaurants, nightlife, but understand one thing: this might be last train you can catch. So the smartest move right now might be this: look for a modest house or apartment in a simpler neighborhood, farther from the city, maybe not the nicest location, maybe with a terrible interior, but buy it. Take the mortgage and own something. Yes, you'll take on debt. Yes, you'll lose some freedom, but at least you know you're not paying rent to an investment fund or some boomer landlord. You're paying for your own place, even if it's simple, because in 30 years you might not even be able to afford that, and your kids definitely won't. And if your career improves, nothing stops you from selling that home in 5 or 6 years and upgrading. You can't break the system, but given the reality we live in, this might be the best decision you can make for your future and your family. If you agree, like and subscribe. If you disagree, hit dislike. And with that, I will see you next time.